So, what do you think is the difference between this and this? Yeah, everyone keeps thinking they're the same, but they aren't. Honestly, like, they're not. They're not the same thing. They work together, obviously. They always have to work together, but they're not the same thing. So, when it comes to story and storytelling, people often mix them up because, like, it sounds similar. It's just ing that's that separates them, but they're actually two completely different things. So, let's start with story. When it comes to story just deals with the message. What are you trying to portray? What is the thing you want your audience to know? So it's about like the message or the idea you're trying to convey. Let's break that down. When it comes to story often deals with the plot, the characters, and the theme. So the idea, the characters, and what happens. That's often what the story is surrounded around. And then in storytelling, there's often the whole everything else, basically. Because there's a lot of things that go into storytelling. Storytelling is like, how do you design the characters? How do your characters blend in with your world? And how does a plot tie into the visuals and like composition? All those other crazy things all fit into storytelling. And the problem with mixing these two is that you will lose sight of like the main idea. When you don't focus on the story first, for example, you get to the point where like at the end, if you have no main idea or like there's no main point for the story, and it becomes basically a mess at the end. And yeah, you don't want that. And I think that's something actually that's been happening to a lot of like recent movies too, because they look really good. The storytelling is really good, but the story itself sucks. And when I mean storytelling here, I'm talking about like how they try to tie the visuals to like the characters and stuff like that. That's also storytelling. But the problem is, if your initial story doesn't make sense, well, the whole thing is just like a beautiful nothing. It's just there, but it has no purpose. So that's one of the main reasons why you want to be careful. So what are some things you can do to actually avoid this problem? Because I'm talking a lot about people's mistakes, but I'm not giving you any solution. So let's go to the solution. If you want to tell a good story, one of the first things you need to focus on is, well, obviously the story. The story meaning what is the point and what is the main idea of your story. And then your characters, your plot, the theme, you want to keep all those things in mind and you want to be very clear about them. So have a defined idea, because that is going to help you. For example, we could say Arcane. Arcane is one of like, in these past 3 years, I still haven't seen a story as well told as Arcane, personally. I've seen other good animes, I've seen other good movies, but Arcane as a cartoon was so well done. And why is that? Is because they focused on their story first. Their story was so well designed that like doing the storytelling part became so much easier because they knew exactly what they were looking for. Same thing goes with one of my favorite animes, Attack on Titan. The story is so well structured in a way that like there is a story in a story and it keeps going. That's something that's really hard to replicate or really hard to do unless you have an initial understanding of what your story is and what it's gonna do. Not gonna spoil it, those who haven't watched it. If you haven't watched it, go watch it. Why are you doing that? Go watch it. When you're trying to label out your story or trying to package your story, keep those 3 things in mind, because they will change the way you tell your stories. Storytelling, on the other hand, deals with the art of the story. So basically, like, how are you going to portray that? It deals with the how, basically. And people often mix being a storyteller with the story itself. And sometimes we focus too much on one side and then forget about the other. I mean, humans. Storytelling is you trying to capture the audience attention and like crafting the narrative and making it flow and work together. An example of this would be like, well, an example of it done well would be like the new Puss in Boots. Like, it is so well, like the storytelling is so well crafted. Or Into the Spider-Verse also, where it's crazy, but even down to like the frame rates, they were doing crazy stuff with it and adding it to the story. That is like another level of storytelling, but like that is also the attention to detail, because like in storytelling you want to pay attention to the little things and like improve them and make them actually a part of the story you're trying to tell. And same thing with the world, the way they did their characters, and each character sort of had its own, their own little story and its own, and it was perfect because telling stories like that, first of all, is difficult, and at the same time adding a storytelling aspect to it is also something that's very complicated. And like they really did a lot and went all out with that. And that also goes to show that like you can't just tell a good story. When you have the storytelling aspect added to it, it becomes visual perfection, my friend. Pay attention, peoples. Tell your stories with artistic beauty, my friends, because that will level you up. So pay attention to detail, especially when it comes to your storytelling aspect, because detail is what basically takes it from like, oh yeah, it's a good movie, to oh my goodness, I never even noticed that. Even today, there are some movies that I watch that are like classics in like how well the storytelling is, that like now when you watch them you notice stuff and you're like, oh my goodness, I never even noticed that. Simply said, those two, storytelling and story, they live together, but you have to also learn how to balance them out, because once you're not balancing them out, it can turn into a mess very quickly, because you will have amazing visuals, amazing storytelling, but a sad story, or you have a great story but you thought your story was gonna do everything for you. It doesn't work like that. So learn to balance them out and keep creating. I'll see you next one. Good.